great session till now, and I'm sure that all of us should be up right till the end. I thought lunch and music would have ensured that we sleep, but there was a good exercise. I thought this kind of ensured that everybody is up. So, like everyone, can we raise our hand saying that we are in very much part of this session? Great. Thank you so much. I know it's a Sunday and you would want to rush back soon. How much time do we have? 15.
We have 15 minutes and
I was told 3 hours by the way. 3 hours is what told me. 15, which was jokes apart. I'll start the panel discussion with a quote which I really like. The quote says, it's from Tina Seelig. She is one of the professors at Stanford. Quote says, being an entrepreneur is not about turning lemons into lemonades. It's about turning lemonades into helicopters. So I'm sure we were discussing in the morning that there are opportunities. So you get into entrepreneurship either by choice or you're forced to get into it. You don't have an option B, there is no plan B for you guys, and then you get into it. The question is that most of us would aspire to become something very big. So we want to probably get into entrepreneurship, not for charity, of course, is part of it, but most of us would want to become the next Flipkarts or next big guys. So that's where, my question to all the panel members, and I'll start with Salil, with you. Is there an answer to the question, how can I create $1 million company?
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful time. Let me take this question slightly differently. So, and sort of come back and ask some of you who are entrepreneurs, did you become an entrepreneur to be the next $1 million, $1 billion person? Did you become an entrepreneur for wealth creation? What is the driver behind entrepreneurship? And I think it's extremely important to understand that. I became an entrepreneur, I had a first stint of entrepreneurship when I was 29. And quite honestly, when I finished my MBA from IIMnetWORK, nobody even taught me that valuation was the game. So 80s, that game did not exist. And when I became an entrepreneur in 1989, I did not even realize that valuation is the driver. So why did I become an entrepreneur? Right? And I think some of the thoughts that I will share with you will gel with some of the people here. I became an entrepreneur because I thought that I would like to do things that I love to do. Right? So I did not want to work for somebody and do things that I'm told to do. Rather than that, I would like to do things that I like to do. I like the freedom of being on my own. I like the excitement of not having a boss, of not having someone tell me what to do. I think I like the excitement of creating ideas and converting them ideas into something that I could see actually blossom, flourish, or in some form or the other. And quite honestly, even if I go back to that 7-year stint from 90 to 97, I can recall a number of stories of things that one did which have actually become significant and have created value for organizations that I did that with even today, right? So I think what I'm trying to say is, the first question that everyone needs to ask is, why are you becoming an entrepreneur? Are you becoming an entrepreneur for the $1 billion game, or are you becoming an entrepreneur for some of the other emotional issues that come, right? I personally think that, or at least I'm very clear that I became an entrepreneur for the emotional satisfaction. I'm again an entrepreneur, right? So while the valuation bug is now there in my head, and I sort of keep thinking, so if I start something, will I get a buyer in 5 years' time, and will I make 100 crores out of it? I don't know. But quite honestly, very important parameters for me are still some of the personal questions like, do I enjoy this? Is this relevant to the society? Is this something that I really want to do? Is this going to make a difference to the world, right? So that's a personal way of looking at it, and I'm encouraging some of you to think like that. Just to add on to that, I'll take another half a minute. If valuation is your driver, right, and if that is where you are coming from, trust me, it's a very risky game. It's an extremely risky game, and enough people will tell you that the chances of success are 1 in whatever, right? So let's say 1 in 100, which means that if 100 people start, and if you want to play that high risk game, again, it's a personal choice. If some of the other drivers are what are making you become an entrepreneur, I can guarantee that's a much better journey. The only reason thing that I would like to sort of talk about, and we can talk more about it later, is that if you're on that journey, please make sure that you have a model that is sustainable, a model that starts giving you profit. So you're not looking at just borrowed money to run the business. You're being able to generate money early enough in the business to be able to sustain that business. Maybe we'll come back to some of these points later.
Thank you so much. Amit, now my question to you is, now, what do you think there is a difference between a traditional model and a sustainable business model? What do you think about that?
Sure. So, just to share with our friends in the audience, I run our taxis, which offers one-way cabs for outstation travel. Okay, so the whole market dynamics are changing. A lot of people who used to own taxis are now not the people who actually run the business, but the people who actually front-end the marketing part. So what aggregators like this Uber and Olas of the world, now they are changing the complete dynamics of the game. So they're shifting from demand-led or a supply-led to an aggregator-led, somebody who connects the demand as well as the supply. So coming to your question, like traditional business versus a sustainable business. So
if you could take an example.
Yeah, sure. Take for example, a Chawdi Bazaar. I'm sure all of us go for our wedding printing cards to a Chawdi Bazaar. There are thousands of shops, okay, greeting cards and all that, okay. Maybe 10 years back there were lines of shops, okay, and you would find very few now. Why? Because it's a traditional business, okay, people get their cards printed there, but in the last 10 years, markets are shifting to e-cards and emails, and even wedding cards nowadays, you hardly get a invite through a printed wedding cards or greeting cards, okay. So the whole economy is now shifting to something which in the future is a sustainable business, okay. So a traditional business can be converted into a sustainable business.
But what happens, say suppose those market dynamics, what you call it as a traditional business, was an innovation at that point in time. Now, something which is running in right now could get obsolete over a period of time. Where is the sustainable business model comes in place?
Exactly. So what is sustainability by itself? The definition of sustainability is something that will last long, okay, but it does not mean permanence of doing something which you have been doing forever, okay. So like I can talk about our taxis. So for example, let us say a taxi supplier in Chandigarh, okay, who had a office, he must be sitting on a khatia, 10 drivers surrounding outside a railway station or an airport. Consumers are coming, giving him order. Nowadays we don't do that. You would be leaving your flight from Delhi, first making a booking online, waiting for SMS or email confirmation, so that when you land up in Chandigarh, the driver is waiting for you at the pickup point. You don't go there and negotiate. Same thing in the hotels. Nowadays we would first make the booking for any hotel to any city which we go to, rather than saying कि वो receptionist room में जरा पता करना कौन सा खाली है कौन सा नहीं खाली है. Those were the traditional business models. Nowadays the whole dynamics have shifted to build something sustainable. You have to go with those dynamics, which is what we do.
Thank you. Shipra, my question.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, I think you touched upon a very interesting thing, and I just want to add one line to this. I think what he's saying here, and we can get lost between the words sustainable, traditional, etc., etc. I think for an entrepreneur to be sensitive to how the environment is changing and how the business needs to transform on an ongoing basis is extremely critical. And if you go back, there are enough case studies of businesses that have collapsed only because they did not know or were not sensitive to the next big change that was coming in the industry. And I think,
but sometimes it becomes very difficult to predict what's going to happen.
No, so fine, you may not be able to predict and you may not be the first player, but adapting to it very quickly, he brought up a beautiful example of wedding cards, right? Wedding cards is something that may actually become zero in the next 5 years, right? People will stop using wedding cards, right? You could have, so in the last 1 year, I have received at least 3 invites which were short videos on a WhatsApp. There's no wedding card. Now, for these wedding card companies who are stuck to the production of wedding cards, have they thought of moving and saying, can I add this as a service? When the person comes, can I offer him this also? Maybe that could be the additional source of revenue. That's what I'm saying. So it does not mean that he completely transforms, but he's sensitive to it, he sees those changes, and he's able to very quickly adapt and expand his business. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Shipra, my question to you is, can you define key characteristics of a sustainable business model?
Yeah, sure. So, just before I touch upon that, when I was invited for this speaking event, for a moment it occurred to me that probably I've not updated my LinkedIn profile for a while, because I did work on a corporate strategy project for cements at the Birla Group, and probably that's why somebody was thinking that she could talk about strategy and sustainability in an organization, and then figured that no, my LinkedIn profile seems to be updated, and there has to be more reason why they're calling upon an entrepreneur in a wellness space to speak about it. It made me take a step back and think about it. Have I been able to build a business which is sustainable? Have I been able to work upon the areas which will make my venture sustainable in the long run? So it was interesting reflection for me to that extent. Coming back to sustainability, there are obviously research papers and industry reports around the same, and the typical characteristics would be that you create value for your shareholders, whether it's your customers or your consumers, your employees and your shareholders. Those are traditional things. So taking a step back, creating value through a startup, as very rightly sir pointed out, when you're starting up, what is it that triggers your ambition and triggers you to start out, venture out? Those values and that value creation actually is what is a very strong trigger behind every thought, whether it is so once you are creating values for all these stakeholders, you're actually adding value to your organization as well, and hence creating wealth for yourself as well in the long run. So that's where it starts. The three key stakeholders in any organization being the customer, the employee, and the stakeholders, which is your investors, etc. Traditional mindset with respect to employees, I'll start with employees. I am managing a spa setup, currently 33 spas, 36 spas as of this month now in 23 cities. It's an asset-light model, and we've been able to scale up fast. The key there is actually employees, and I personally have actually grown in the last 3.5 years in terms of how I look upon my employees. They used to be a cost center, how I looked upon them. So hired the least trained and the most cost effective, 8,000 very good. Forget about the 18,000 healer. We call it therapist healers, not therapists. So that's how we started off, and slowly and steadily we realized that's not how it will sustain, right? So that's where sustainability kicks in. That's not how I'll be able to add value to. So I was thinking about consumers all the time and not the employees. So that's not how I will add value to a consumer. I will need to go back and ensure that I am in a more value-adding mode with respect to employees as well. So that's one very, very micro aspect of pertaining to my venture. That yes, employees have to be carried forward not as cost centers but as value centers, whereby we keep adding, we keep renewing interest in their skill development, ensuring that they buy into the vision of your co-founders, etc., so that the scale up is that much more easier. Consumer. Now, share of wallet and increasing the share of wallet is a traditional mindset that across all FMCG companies or all large companies, that's what we try to achieve. So I think instead of share of wallet, a more superior, sustainable approach is actually how do I add more value? So whether it's a car, whether it's a laptop, whether it's a phone, what is it that will be of more value? We have bundled service concept coming with phones, that's adding more value, right? And consumers are willing to pay for it. So share of wallet obviously increases. However, fundamentally, the approach should and could be more that how do I increase value for my consumer? Last but not the least, when you talk about investors, I think that's the fundamental of any business that you venture out into. The fundamentals being that does it have a viable business model? Are there GOPs which you will be able to deliver over a period of time? Of course, there are customer acquisition costs. Of course, there are growth pressures. But fundamentals of the business, in terms of the capital deployed to the ROI earned, so are the fundamentals in place? What we call unit economics for retail setups, or fundamentally, the ROI basis, ROE basis for manufacturing setups. So that's how the construct is. You have these three pillars and you add value in building these three pillars. That's how I think sustenance happens. I did do a reflection of whether I'm doing some of this. Yeah, somewhere there. So I hope to build a sustainable venture in the future. Too early to say.
Thank you so much. Salil, one more question to you. Now, you advise a lot of startups, and a lot of entrepreneurs who would want to, get into entrepreneurship. Now, how do you tell them that this is the sustainable model? How do you go about sharing their idea to execution? What do you speak to them? What do you talk to them? What do you understand from them?
So, the question that you're asking is extremely wide, but I'll try and focus on one very specific thing. And I have a couple of very interesting examples. I'll not name people, but those examples come to my mind as I answer this question. I've met a number of people, through the network, because I mentor entrepreneurs. I actually meet a number of people who want to become entrepreneurs, and it's a wonderful sign. So one of my first questions is actually about why do you want to become an entrepreneur? The next obvious question is, okay, what do you want to do? Right? And a lot of them, some of them have no ideas, but a lot of them have very concrete ideas. The challenge is that the idea by itself means nothing. And therefore, one of the things that I do with them is to help them understand how they're going to actually execute that idea. Is that idea really doable? Is that idea really something that the customers need? Is that something that will generate revenue? Right? So you may have a wonderful idea of selling ABC, but if there are no takers for ABC at the price point at which it becomes meaningful for you to sell it, then it doesn't make sense. Right? So one of the challenges that I face is people will come up with, they'll say, oh, I've created this wonderful mobile app, I will do this, we'll have 1 lakh downloads and this is how I'll make great money. Why will a person download your app? And I said, so one of these situations I actually told the person that came to me, I said, listen, you're extremely passionate about it, which is wonderful. But can you think dispassionately and tell me 5 reasons why you will fail? And I encourage all entrepreneurs to go back and think like this. Think of reasons why you will fail. Think of reasons why it will not work. It's sometimes a very good way of looking at it.
I think change is evident. People who change with time, adapt, move forward, continue to add value are the people who stay back. And that's what sustainable business is all about. Thank you so much. Many questions you guys have? A lot of them.
My question is for Shipra. You said there are 3 things
investors is that they will see value if your product, I did mention, right, that if your product in itself, the fundamentals are right. If you have a product or a service which has fundamentals in place in terms of the GOP, gross operating margin will happen, profits will fall in place, you have a plan for the ROI happening. So that is fundamentally, the mathematical engineering of your product or service. And very rightly, a lot of people have pointed out, ideas are too many and too frequent. However, it eventually boils down how you monetize those ideas, how you ensure getting about executing those ideas. So yes, the fundamental idea is of importance. I mean, in today's day and age, I shouldn't be thinking of what example can I give. So if your idea can't be replete and obsolete, so obviously the idea is there, but and the mathematical and the financial aspects need to be sorted. And that is what your investor will look at, frankly. So that's what I meant when I mentioned your key stakeholders, and not really investor stakeholders in the venture. I hope I've been able to answer that. Yeah.
Right.
I have a very simple question. When you start with an idea and some model or some theory in your mind, and after 2 years you realize that what your idea was right, but the strategy and what all you adopted was totally wrong, and then you start in a new dimension. And then you spend 2 more years, and again then you realize that what you did was not right. Now, how do you find it out that now it is you're going on the right model, or what we call a sustainable model? Like, because third time it question comes to your mind that 2 years you will work on this model, and after 2 years you will again say, no, this was not the right thing to be done.
Okay. So, one of the very critical things that any entrepreneur needs to do is to establish a very strong business model right from the beginning, right? And when I say a strong business model, one of the key things that you need to do is to define some of your key metrics. And if you're tracking these key metrics, you will be able to figure out that you're not going in the right direction, right? And that's the time you need to do course correction. You probably do not even need to wait for 2 years to be able to figure it out. And there has to be your model has to throw this back at you on an ongoing basis, whether it's the taxi business or it's the spa business or any other business. If you do not have the right metrics for your business, then you will not be able to see these ideas even after 2 years. It does not make sense to wait for 2 years. If you actually see something going wrong, you need to do it as apt.
One last question.
Hi.
Anil, my question for you is that
Amit.
That post the Uber episode, in the line of business that you are, how do you mitigate such a risk beyond operational parameters?
Okay, so one is the legality part of it. Okay. The other part is how do you tackle it beyond going through the legal issues, etc. Okay, so first of all, we are not in the radio taxi business. We are in the outstation taxi business. From a legal point of view, it's a self-regulated industry. The government does not determine, and I'm sure you will be surprised to know when I started this, I was also as surprised as you will be. Government does not determine what prices you can charge, what routes you can fly, what are the safety norms, whether you need a license or not, what are the competition laws, any other predatory or competition laws do not apply for an outstation taxi business. Okay, this is what we are at right now. Now coming to those aspects, for example, what you are saying is something happened in that radio taxi business. Again, that's also still under the court process. So litigation will decide who wins and what kind of norms are applied for the future. And any corporate we'll have to put in those places. Okay, the compliance and legal issues as prescribed by the government. Okay, so that's one standing, which is a legal and a commercial and corporate standing that we have taken as a company. Now the other aspect, which is going beyond things like this. Okay, so for example, right now we are a small business. Okay, so we have some things which we can put personally in control. Okay, so every time we know that yes, there's a lady driving big trips, because ours is a car rental chauffeur driven business. Okay, so I personally instruct the driver ki ye meri behan ki sister ki friend hai, or somebody I know.
But when you grow your business, I think that's
I'm sure we have that problem at
that way you accept your wife before you come to your sister.
You try to understand. Okay, there are ways in which you have to handle. In the future, we will have to put together those things when we have thousands and lakhs and millions bookings happening every day. We'll have to come up with a different solution. Right now, our solution is whenever we come to know that it's a single person, taking a night drive. Okay, this is what we tell the driver कि बस ये तो मेरी बहन की सहेली है और वो travel कर रही है, कुछ भी हुआ तो मैं तेरे को आगे से blacklist करके personally I'll see that I come after you.
I just want to add a bit to that.
And definitely I love to know if there are better ways to handle it.
I'm sure there will be. I'll add to that. So I think risk is fantastic in any business. Obviously, the kind of valuations you get and eventually how you're able to grow your business. the risk has a, some saying in that. But frankly, that's the competitive advantage that, as a startup, as an entrepreneur, you can build on, right? If you know that it's fundamentally, there is some aspect of risk, what are the steps and processes you're putting in place to actually mitigate that risk and win over that risk, and just ensure that you're doing that process right, it gives you a significant competitive advantage and is a huge entry barrier for just about anybody starting a taxi business, right? So I think risk to that extent is good. Secondly, in terms of what my friend has been saying here, so I think that's very relevant when you are just about starting up. But as you scale, these things translate into processes, right? So fundamentally this is a risk, and identifying that yes, this is a risk, and these are the 10 possible risks that are possible in my venture. This is how I will address them, and these are the processes which will help me mitigate at least 80% of these risks. There are few which are never sort of mitigated, but I think identifying and then putting in those processes to mitigate those risks is what helps people sustain further. And I think identification is...
Would you communicate to your customers that you do mitigate these risks?
Absolutely. If I am confident for those 80% which I know I've put in processes, and these risks will be mitigated because of my processes, I will want to communicate to my consumers. It works both ways, right? So my employees know that these are the risks that my company is saying they're mitigating, and consumers are reaching out to you because, and that's what trust eventually in a brand becomes.
Just one thing I can add.
Which I want to add, to answer to your Uber thing, Uber is already working on an SOS button, which should be there in the app, which should be there in the taxi. So in case you're traveling, it will be just anywhere in front of you. So it's like on the back seat there is an app which is a mobile which will be installed. All you need to do press that button in case of any emergency. There will be help which will be there.
So
they are already
I can also add
already working on.
All of us in this room are both as a business owner as well as consumer, especially because we are talking about this taxi industry in this specific case. But I sit in the middle of both these sides, the consumers as well as the supply. In fact, we have come across incidents, not happened in our network or in the trips that we have booked in the last few months. But there have been cases of the consumers attacking the driver, taking off with the car and selling it off at scrap for 50,000. Imagine a Innova which is in the market for 14-15 lakhs getting sold off for 40-50,000 just because a simple thing, for example, which we put together in place as a processes. Customer will never be picked up from the different address that he has given at the time of booking. Simple rule. If he says that pick me up from an MG Road Metro pillar number 12, no pickup. If he says I am coming from this hotel, pick me up from an outside the hotel, I will be in this parking space, not allowed. You get picked up from the lobby. The best case is the driver will come to the lobby to pick you up. There have been those incidents. So the simple check when we say you have to do a booking online, that itself cuts down at least 90% of such cases which could occur from the other side as well. And you are well aware of the legal issues both in Haryana. I don't need to talk about which state has got worse crime rates than Delhi, even UP, all over India. We have come across different scenes. The only thing is we have to put across our checks and balances, which come through experience.
Any more questions or?
Maybe we can reserve the questions for the next panel.
Last.
Just one question for Salil. Do investors look at scale or sustainability? Do they prioritize one over the other?
So again, investors look at scale, full stop, right? And I don't think there's any other answer to that. But that's where the question comes. If you're going for the $1 billion, that's when you need the investor. I genuinely think that you should be able to create a small business. If you're emotionally becoming an entrepreneur, do it with little money without going for that big investor. Let it come to a point where the investors will run after you rather than you running after the investor. Very idealistic talk that I'm giving you, but at least if you can have that kind of a thinking process, you'll go a much longer way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Put your hands together for this panel.